G'day investigators, Mike Evans, and I'd also like to say hello to security risk managers, Certificate 4 and diploma level security risk managers, security managers, private investigators, mercantile agents, loss adjusters, and the alumni of the Australian Security Academy. And g'day to our 1,000 members of the Academy of Investigation, Risk and Loss Adjusting Professionals. This week in Australia, this firm, Build Skills, reckon that they are going to be consulting with the security industry in Australia regarding changes to the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services qualification and the Security Risk Management qualification. So there's the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services, which the people at Build Skills, without any form of consultation with any private investigators, any regulatory authority, or any licensed private investigator or their employers, are going to change or water down and dilute. They're going to do it as well to security management and security risk management, and they haven't consulted with anyone other than one organisation, was an RTO, that has government funding, which is not the reality of the pointy end of the investigation and security risk people in Australia. So this Tuesday and this Wednesday, I'll be representing you and your employees' future for their professional development and the proper application of skills in the industry at the forum that Build Skills are having in Brisbane. And just to make absolutely sure there's no BS coming out of that, I'll be at the Sydney one as well the next day. So they can't say that we did this and said that when I'm there with them totally under the microscope. Now, they're running their agenda that looks like this. They're saying that they're consulting and they haven't, and they're saying this is what the workshop's about, and they've got 90 minutes to do it in. So they will spend in that 90 minutes, half an hour on introductions, and then they'll go for 55 minutes on whatever they want to present as data, because that's what they do, because they're data-driven at Build Skills. That's all they do, okay? Now, data-driven is absolutely fantastic if you work in architecture or naming streets for the council. That's really, really important there, but it doesn't work in the real world of national security at the pointy end in suburban Australia. Now, the fall of Singapore in World War II that resulted in hundreds of thousands of Australians becoming POWs without even putting up a fight or firing a shot was data-driven. It was data-driven because all the places above Singapore were overrun by the Japanese, and the data said, well, the Japanese are all conquering, so let's put up our hands and surrender. And multiple people suffered and died needlessly because the data said so. And that's what Build Skills rely on. They like data and not reality, and they don't test the data. Other places where data has been recently in Australia is down in this Sydney at the shopping centre at Double Bay. Now, the data didn't say that this guy is going to go off and go crazy with a knife. And we also had violent protests down in Melbourne that are an international scale. Now, Build Skills are pretending that all these things never happen, and that if we look at proper window treatments for people who are going to do naughty things, then everything will be all right. I'm sorry, Build Skills, that's not going to happen. The security and investigation industry in Australia is worth $5 billion annually as a minimum, and we have a voice that's going to be heard. Okay, these things are real. They happen every day, and these people go out and do silly things, and the security investigation industry in Australia is vital to preventing that. And we're not listening to you saying that, oh, we have to do what you say about the data at Build Skills. Now, Build Skills, what they do is they say we did research and we're presenting the data, and here's the data on these occupations, and this is a skill level for them. And a 2-year-old with access to the internet can do that. And here's the guy in charge of Build Skills trying to justify that all their decisions are data-driven and they've got to water down security training in Australia because it will make it easier for government funding for one RTO, but it won't improve the skill level, the English-speaking level of the person coming out of a security course in Australia and make them employable beyond $10 an hour. Build skills are about dumbing down the security industry and not assisting employers, regulators, the government, and the general public in relation to the benefits of the security industry and what it does in the investigation industry in Australia. Build skills are predominantly dominated and have said that all the other organisations and RTOs in the property services area, which is architects and spatial design, this is very important, having spatial design. These places, all their qualifications are right, but they're going to get rid of or water down the security qualifications to make government funding easier for one RTO, and they don't have to worry about assessment, that sort of thing, because who cares, right? It's not window treatments, which is what Build Skills understand. Look at that window treatment. How good are those chambray curtains? Here, look at this spatial design, how it affects how you live. That is just so important. This is what Build Skills focus on. And look at that spatial design in that extended reality there, and the retro feeling of this 90s spatial design about where you live. And just imagine how many knife attacks good spatial design will prevent in Australia moving forward once Build Skills complete their agenda of watering down the security qualifications and training in Australia. Well, Build Skills think that's what they've got to do, because they've got unlimited funding, no accountability, and they just say, oh, we consulted in Brisbane and Sydney, no one came along and said anything. And I'm going, well, hang on, I wasn't even given a chance, so I'm saying it now, all right? Build Skills have not listened, they don't understand, and they have no idea what they're toying with in vocational education and training and development professionally in Australia as far as security and risk management goes. And our 1,000 members that we have here on this program from AirLap, who are members of this industry association, are going to make sure that I put their case for improvements in training and investigations to them this Tuesday and Wednesday. And that includes making the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services a Certificate 4, getting rid of the 2 diploma units out of the Certificate 4 in Security Risk Management and making them just diploma units, and also addressing the 2 problems with assessment within the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services before it becomes a Certificate 4, and correcting the units in the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services that are part of the government investigation qualification to make them unique to the new Certificate 4 in Investigative Services. So all that will be happening, and I will be telling you about that in the coming weeks. It's really important for future clients such as WorkSafe in Victoria, in Queensland, in New South Wales, Tasmania, South Australia, Western Australia, NT and ACT, that investigative services is treated professionally by Build Skills, and they don't have their mind made up before they go in. They do not consult and they don't listen to one guy. Okay, that's what they were doing. All right, so now they're accountable and they're going to be held to account this coming Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, what's the problem with pushing, as an architect and a spatial designer and a window treatment person, right? What's the problem with pushing your agenda and saying we've got to have a built environment? Now, you can't argue with a built environment because it doesn't mean anything, right? And if you argue against it, it's a case of emperor's new clothes. All right, if you can't see that the emperor's wearing invisible clothes, you're an idiot, because Build Skills get $500 million funding a year, right? Well, it doesn't work like that. How it works is you create something that says built environment, which is airy-fairy, and everybody's got to agree with you according to Build Skills. Now, they're going to say, well, the built environment is a combination of living, of spatial design, of architecture, of planning, of street names, and of course security and all this other stuff, and you can't deny it. Hey, I live in a built environment and there have been 2 murders there this year and 1 attempted murder. So please don't tell me that a built environment's going to save security problems, and that built environment where I live has 24/7 security and 2 police stations right next door to it. All right, so this isn't window treatments we're talking about here, Build Skills. We're talking about people's welfare and security in Australia. So let's go and have a look at the historical aspects of this that go beyond data-driven, such as bad decisions made in the past in Australian history. What are some recent ones that have come out? In 1987, the Keating government planned the first multifunction policy in Australia. Now, the Australian spatial design, architecture and construction industry have got to stop getting on the drugs and get off them. We're not going to have biospheres on top of Uluru to make the architects rich and happy with roller coasters and recreational sports all around it. This is Australia, and we're going to not have the Boxing Day test covered by some horrific glass biosphere where people lived it, designed by people on drugs who thinks it's going to be good for Australia. It is not going to happen. Our critical infrastructure does not require an add-on, make architects rich couple of glass domes on the critical infrastructure with a roller coaster and a scuba dive. Now, the scuba dive is very important and it's coming in a minute. Let's just keep the spatial design and built environment to Canberra, where the Build Skills get their funding from, and everybody will be happy. We don't want it anywhere else. They make it sci-fi to sound like you can't deny it. So have it in Canberra and everybody will be happy, because we don't know what's going on with your sci-fi super city Build Skills. It isn't going to work. But of course, we will have nice window treatments. And I guess that's very important in some cases if you think. Japan's built environment experience had cities there. The Sakuta syndrome was one of the things that came out from the stress brought on by boredom and alienation. So what happened, people? They dived out of the buildings and jumped off them because they were so bored in those buildings. They were horrific places to live. And it colloquially became known as scuba diving, the method of suicide that those Japanese people who lived in those built environment buildings had. So in Australia, no, we do not want to have, based on data that's made up that any 5-year-old can find on the internet and sell as, you know, a really big deal. We don't want that. Data-driven is not always right. Just because there's only 10 people in one qualification doesn't mean that that is irrelevant, and we've got to have more window treatment qualifications and qualifications regarding naming streets in the Northern Territory, which I'm sure is important to everyone at Build Skills. But in the real world, where people aren't on drugs, it's not important at all. So this week, this is what's coming up. We're addressing Build Skills and what they're doing, and we are going to make sure that the Australian security industry has a hearing, that the qualifications are not dumbed down for the benefit of the mates of the decision makers to government and advisors to government who are overpaid and overfunded and out of touch with reality. They're not going to make the decisions on behalf of everybody else working in the industry. So a lot happening this week. I'll report to you on Friday the outcomes of what happened with Build Skills. Thanks for being a member of the 1,000 members of the Academy of Investigation, Risk and Loss Adjusting Professionals. And I'll report to you in episode 294 of Spy Curious, which we have every Friday for the benefit of the Australian security risk management, loss adjusting, mercantile agent and private investigation industry. I'll see you then. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy, and I'm going out in my usual way.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
That's my mission complete on the week beginning 21st of October 2024, as we keep the government funded consultants to the security industry honest in relation to how they conduct consultation, so we make sure that they earn the funding that they're paid for and that they don't maintain architectural and spatial design qualifications to the detriment of real security qualifications that matter to Australia, Australian security, and the security of the general public enjoying themselves daily in Australia. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. See you next week.